right, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Now, today I want to talk a little bit about stretching. Now, we've all heard of stretching. We've all done stretching. Some of us love it. Some of us don't really love it. They find it pretty boring. But we all kind of know what it is. And this particular podcast episode is going to be talking about the merits and the dangers, and dangers in quotation marks, of stretching. And this was inspired from something I got sent from a hiker the other day. And this was a little screenshot of a quote from another hiking coach out there. And they were talking about stretching in some context. I'm not sure whether it's about their program or it was an article or whatever it may be. But I got sent this little screenshot, which I found really, really interesting. And basically what it read was, it was talking about stretching. And it sort of said, the reason why I recommend staying away from static stretching. And static stretching is the type of stretching where you literally just hold a position. So you might do a hamstring stretch and hold that for 30, 40 seconds or 50 seconds, if you're not familiar with that term. But that's what a static stretch is. But the reason why I recommend staying away from static stretching is because it can induce pain and discomfort and do damage to the body itself. You're actually tearing muscle fibers when you stretch. And that's another recovery process the body has to go through. And you know what? I found this pretty interesting because it's something I haven't really heard someone talk about so much before. And it's something that, in all honesty, I think misses the mark quite a bit. And the reason why I want to talk about this today is because, it did get sent to me. And I think, you know what? If people are potentially seeing this advice from, other coaches, other articles, or whatever it may be out there, it may be a little bit confusing. And in all honesty, there is absolutely nothing wrong with static stretching. And you'll see this all the time in the fitness industry where people will talk about something and they'll be like, you know what? I don't want you to do it because it's going to lead to pain and discomfort. And, I do the same thing as myself. And I will often talk about things like, burpees or lunge jumps or squat jumps and stuff that, I don't think it's particularly necessary for hikers. And I've seen a lot of people, who deal with knee or shin issues or whatever it may be, get a little bit uncomfortable with these things. And that's the type of stuff I talk about there. But stretching is an interesting one. Because in all honesty, static stretching, where you're literally just holding a stretch, it's probably one of the most lower intensity forms of exercise or forms of training or however you want to term it out there. And the idea that it can induce pain and discomfort if you're just holding stretches, I don't know. It's a bit of a stretch, in all honesty. And the idea that it causes damage to the body, pretty much anything we do causes damage to the body. Any of our training causes damage to the muscle fibers. Any of our hiking, any of our strength training, any of our walking, any of our running, any of that causes damage to our muscle fibers. That's how we train and how we develop, or one of the ways we train. So the idea of saying, stretching causes damage to these muscle fibers is a bad thing. You know what? In all honesty, I think it's a bit of a stretch. So in all honesty, I think, if you do come across something out there, which is kind of trying to scare you away from static stretching, I would honestly say, maybe ignore it. Is it the best thing in the world? Yeah, maybe not. Is it as cracked up as it is to be? Like a lot of people say it'll cure every single thing in the world. And yeah, probably not. Are there maybe potentially better ways of going about your stretching? Yeah, potentially. But, it's not harmful. It's not scary. It's not going to set you back. Now, essentially, yeah, it's a bit of a weird one. But anyway, basically, when it comes down to stretching, for me personally, I think there's sort of 4 big benefits to this type of stretching. I often get my hikers doing it in one way or another. I often recommend them doing it, whether it's in their rest periods, in their strength training, whether it's in their off days from their training, whether it's at the end of day of a hiking, whatever it may be. And I think there's really 4 big benefits of this type of thing. Number 1, is static stretching, or any stretching in general, can help improve range of motion through key joints. So as we talked about in the podcast in many times is, one of the sort of contributors or potential contributors to pain or discomfort is sometimes if the muscles surrounding a joint are a little bit too tight, This can cause the body just to sort of compensate in different ways, allow movement in certain areas, and this can lead to a little extra foot pressure, which can sometimes lead to a little bit extra discomfort. So essentially, if we do stretch these areas and we do it consistently, and we stretch key areas and improve that range of motion, this can be potentially beneficial. And, anyone who's done a consistent stretching or consistent yoga practice will know if they've stuck with it for, 4, 5, 6 weeks, they probably will notice a bit of increase in range of motion. So that's one big benefit of stretching. Number 2 is stretching can potentially help the body warm up before you move. Now, I'm not saying static stretching is the best way to warm up or anything like that, but sometimes, if you start a training session or you start a hike and you just go in dead cold and you don't do a normal warm up, just doing a couple of stretches at the start can sometimes just prep us physically and mentally to start. It's probably not going to dramatically improve our performance or anything like that, but it may just make you feel a bit more comfortable initially, physically and mentally, and that can be a good benefit. Now, static stretching can also potentially aid recovery and reducing aching and sore muscles after training or hiking. Now, in the previous example, I was sort of saying before, like the quote was sort of saying stretching will set back your recovery and make it take longer. But in all honesty, I think that's a bit of a stretch. Where stretching, bit of a stretch, pun there, yeah, great. But basically where stretching does come into the recovery practice is it just helps us calm down. It helps us relax. And pretty much anything in the world which just settles our body, settles our mind, helps us relax, helps us get out of that sort of zone where we are a little bit pumped up, a little bit stressed. Anything that helps with that is going to be beneficial for your recovery. So stretching is a really accessible thing. Other things that will do a similar thing are like breathing techniques or lying in a hot bath or reading a book or really anything that will just help chill you out and calm you down. It doesn't have to be too technical. And stretching is just an easy way of going about that. And also when it comes into, the aching and sore muscles, we've all sort of finished training sessions and we're like, oh my gosh, my legs, they're a little bit achy. Or we've laid in bed and we're like, oh my gosh, my legs are sore or whatever it may be. And we all know that just doing a little bit of stretching can help relieve that a little bit in the short term and just help us feel a bit more comfortable. Now, there's, if you want to get really, really technical, there probably has been some studies to show that, look, it doesn't make a dramatic difference to your longer term recovery. Like if you're testing, say, power output or sprinting ability, and like someone might sprint one day and then do stretching and then sprint the next day, and they'll compare that to someone who hasn't stretched, and maybe there might not be a massive difference. But that's getting really technical. In all honesty, if we're feeling better, feeling more relaxed, feeling more comfortable, that's a plus for me. And then finally, stretching can just help yourself prepare mentally for a big tough day of hiking. Sometimes people do start the day of hiking thinking this is going to be a big day, and there can be a bit of anxiety, a bit of stress, a bit of, just toughness in the head. I'm not really using my words so well this morning, but toughness in the head, you'll know what I mean there. But basically, yeah, stretching can just help settle that a little bit, help get you in the zone, help manage that. And then also at the end of the day, like it just can help you wind down and calm down. So in all honesty, I think stretching and static stretching specifically, does have a few potential benefits. It's not going to be a magic pill for anything. It's probably not going to dramatically reduce your risk of injury, but it can be good to help improve range of motion, to reduce the likelihood of aches and pains. It can be a nice way to warm up at the beginning of the day to stop you sort of, hobbling around at the start. It can potentially aid your recovery and reduce a bit of aching and soreness, and it can help prepare you mentally or wind down at the end of the day. And the beautiful thing of stretching and static stretching is it's quick. It doesn't require any equipment. It's really easy to do, and it won't cost you a cent. So why not do it, in all honesty? Because it's not going to damage your muscle fibers. It's not going to induce pain and discomfort. It's not going to negatively impact your recovery. It's not scary. It's not worrisome. If you want to do it, do it. If you don't want to do it, don't do it. But don't be worried about stretching, because I think in the grand scheme of things, there are so many other things that you kind of would want to think about negatively before stretching. So I think that's probably enough on this topic. So to wrap it all up, static stretching, just holding a stretch for long periods of time, it's not something you need to be worried about. Is it the best thing in the world? Probably not. Is it the worst thing in the world, or is it a negative thing? Definitely not. It does have a few potential benefits, and in all, it can just make us feel good. And, that in a nutshell for a lot of the types of things we're talking about for recovery or for training, if it makes us feel good, that's a massive, massive win. So if you want to do your stretching, go right ahead. Don't be worried about it, and do not stress about adding this into your week, into your day, into your hiking, into training, or whatever it may be. So hopefully that all makes sense to you. Now, if you were interested in diving into a little bit more around stretching, if you're sort of interested in learning a few of my favorite stretches for hikers, whether it's the beginning or the end of the day or whatever it may be, or you just wanted to sort of discuss any of the points brought up on this particular podcast, I would absolutely love for you to come and find me on the Training for Hiking and Trekking Facebook group. Now, inside that group, as I always say, I'm always happy to explore these episodes in a little bit more detail, share exercises, share extra information, or whatever it may be. So if you want to find it, it's the Training for Hiking and Trekking Facebook group. You can find the link for that in the show notes below. So thank you so much for listening today. Hope you've enjoyed it. Hope you got a bit out of it, and we'll talk to you very, very soon. Bye.